Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Welcome, everyone, to the Richness of Our Lives podcast. And how exciting are these podcasts, bringing you so much wisdom, so much knowledge for you to tap into and use in your life. And today is absolutely no exception with my guest. Today we welcome, and a big welcome to Jennifer Morrison from Victoria in Australia. For you people overseas, you can Google that and find out where that is. Now, Jennifer is a parental coach. Now, what that means is she's a coach for parents, just to be super clear. She has an amazing background. My goodness, it would take me a very long time to share with you her talents. She's owned cafes, she's done graphics, she's done advertising, she's owned a homeware store, you know, one of those things where you go and find everything for home. Oh, my goodness. She volunteers for the Violet, I want to get this right, Violet Guides, and she supports people in their bereavement process. Look, I could go on and on. She's one talented woman. I am very grateful to be talking to her today. Hello, Jennifer. How are you?
Hi, Mary, and thank you for that amazing introduction. I'm really, really pleased to have been invited and looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So parents need coaches? What's all that about?
Yeah, it's well, the thing is our kids don't come with a handbook, and this day and age it's really hard to be a parent. It's a lot more challenging than it was when I was a young mum, and I think many parents are struggling to find how to do it the best way possible for their children. So I kind of focus on their parenting style more than anything else.
Oh, I like that, parenting style. And we know that styles change. When you think of styles and fonts and colours, there's a lot of them, isn't there? So that means that parenting is quite varied and people have their own way of doing it. But you said things have changed. What was it like for you as a parent, parenting two children?
Well, I think on a lot of levels it was a lot easier than it is now. There wasn't as much noise, as much distraction for myself as a young parent, and there wasn't the technology and the social media. So it was a lot easier on that level to parent. But on the other hand, there wasn't a lot of information either available. And so I did find at times it was a bit difficult because I wasn't sure what to do and how to do it. And so I think it's a two-edged sword these days. You can have too much information and still not know what to do, or not enough and just kind of muddle your way through. And I kind of muddled my way through.
I think that's true. The pendulum, if you like, has gone from knowing nothing to knowing everything and wanting to sift out. I imagine it's quite difficult for parents to sift out and bring the goodies and the best of themselves to their kids. Is that your experience at the moment?
Definitely. I think parents have got a lot of pressure on themselves to be perfect. Social media is projecting that it's lovely and it's gorgeous and there's happy babies all the time, and kids will always do what you say they're going to do. And if the book says they're going to do that, then they definitely will do that. And unfortunately, that isn't actually what works, because babies don't read the books. and kids certainly don't read the books. And then I think it's like, well, what do I do now? Because my biggest take is that they don't trust themselves enough. They don't trust their gut instincts enough. And I find that very, very sad that that's been overlooked now in place and being placed with a lot of information that seems to be more gospel than truth.
So do you mean, so I'm clear, that they're favouring what the book says or what someone else says over trusting their own instincts, intuition, etc.?
I do believe a lot of parents do that. And because of that, they go against their natural instincts, and that creates another level of anxiety for them as well.
How interesting. So it's what I think you're saying is they override themselves when they would have a natural ability. This is their child. This is, their pride and joy. They would be terribly connected. So I would think the intuition stakes would be quite raised, wouldn't they?
Well, you would think so, wouldn't you? But I think because so much is taken out of social media and out of technology and out of books and listening to other people, that it gets very noisy for them, and they forget that they can go back into themselves and go, well, how am I feeling about this really? What do I feel about this? There's that questioning. They don't question, but they definitely judge themselves, and they bring in a guilt about if they don't get it right. So the fear of not getting it right means that they don't trust their judgment because they think it isn't good enough.
So it's not just social media, though, is it? There must be, like, from the moment the young woman falls pregnant, I'm kind of getting the feeling that there's pressure straight away from all levels, friends, family. Yes, you can add social media, but then you've got the rights and wrongs, and I would think suddenly that escalates it for the young mum, especially for the young mum first timer. That must be just overwhelming and enormous for them.
Well, it is, and I've seen it firsthand with my my own daughter, and I've seen it with my daughter-in-laws, that suddenly there's so much being thrown at them and so many different ways of doing things and things you can do, especially, let's face it, around even what you can eat. It gets to the stage where it's almost impossible to go out to have a dinner with your spouse, because they're second guessing all the time. Is it going to be good enough? There is an awful lot of pressure right from the word go. And going back to when I had children, that certainly wasn't the case. And I think back then it was, and I'm not saying that knowing nothing is a good thing, but I do think sometimes you can know too much and not go down that track of trusting yourself. But equally too, I think sometimes not knowing makes it easier because you do tend to just go with the flow.
Yes, that's interesting, isn't it? Yes, that's right. And I think about my parents and how they parented me, and according to me, that left a lot to be desired. But that may not necessarily have been true. Plus, it wasn't yesterday. But the other thing that strikes me is that their willingness to learn almost is to their detriment. That's what I see. Do you think that's true?
I think it is to a degree. When I was having my kids, I didn't have anyone really to ask about a lot of things. And if I did, it was just, well, that's how we've always done it. So I didn't question it. And therefore, I think I just felt I'm going to have a baby. I'll be fine. It'll work itself out. And I just really honestly did go with the flow. And to a degree, that was okay. And as you said, you're parenting, you think, oh, maybe it wasn't all it was meant to be. And I can look back at the same thing and go, nah, that wasn't really good. But I think every generation does that. They look back at the other generation and go, well, you guys did it all wrong and we're not going to go there again. And I really do think that pendulum has gone so far the other way now. And having too much information can just cloud your judgment. And in a way, it kind of shuts you down because, again, you don't go back to your core stuff. You don't go back to asking yourself because you haven't been encouraged to trust yourself and to believe in yourself. A lot of people don't have that self-belief. And
True.
young mums have a lot of peer pressure. Where women need to be supporting each other, you find a lot of them are not doing that with each other. You know, if one person wants to do sleeping arrangements in a certain way, another one go, oh, no, you shouldn't be doing that. That's so not good for your child. And so then you question what you're doing. And before you know it, it sort of steamrolls. And then you get the toddlers, and then you get all of the feedback on what you should or shouldn't be doing with your toddlers, and into, you know, young kids and then teens. And by the time you get to your teens, I think some parents have just gone, I have no idea what to do anymore. I really don't know where to start. And I find that very sad, you know.
It's not their default, you're saying. Their default is not
Yes.
a natural, innate feeling of I'm a parent, and
Yep.
you know, it's pretty well thought out here that when you get to being a parent, you might actually have a clue what you're doing.
Yeah. And, you know, we're expected to know what we're doing by our kids.
Yes.
If only they knew.
Well, that's right. And then, of course, what I see when I'm out and about is grandparents taking care of grandchildren and fulfilling the role of parents because of, well, a whole lot of pressures that we don't need to go into. But how do you experience that? Because you're out, you're involved with your grandkids, you know what's going on in the world. How much do you see grandparents have taken on that role? I'm not sure what the percentage is, but it's pretty high these days.
Yes, I actually think it's up around 45%, something like that, that grandparents are involved, not just occasionally, but almost on a, weekly basis. I have friends that have their grandchildren 2-3 days a week, and all over school holidays, things like that. I myself have done stints where I've been available for 2 or 3 days a week when they were little and mum's gone back to work. And I now go to Perth for school holidays to look after one of my grandchildren. And I mean, I love it, but equally too, grandparenting today comes with a whole set of rules that weren't around when I had my children. You know, for instance, I would never have told my mum how to look after my children because I would have just trusted her to do it. And apart from don't give them lollies, which I think is the only thing I did say, I just knew that they'd be okay if they were with her, and I trusted that. But now us grandparents, we get given quite a good set of rules before babies come along, and it's very interesting because I've spoken to my peers and they've all been down the same road. It's the same across the board.
So how strict are we? Like, give the audience a bit of now you've whet our appetite. Tell us, are these strict guidelines to be adhered to at all times? Give me a little sample of what you know.
It is. And look, I completely respect my kids when they tell me they want things done a certain way. And because I know that they're the ones that are going to take them home and they've got to deal with the fallout, which is fine. But even just little things around sleep, there's a big thing now about white noise being part of the sleep process for babies and children. So don't forget to turn the white noise on because they won't sleep without it. And don't forget to make the room as black as you can because they won't sleep without it, which to me is quite amusing because when they come and stay at grandma and granddad's, I just put them to bed and they sleep like rocks.
Yeah. No white noise, no blackout curtains.
That's it. Because when kids are tired, they'll sleep. And also around, there's definitely a big thing around eating, and I do get that now because a lot more research has come up around things like allergies to peanuts and that kind of thing. Totally get that. But there's some very, very strict ones that about bedtimes too. You know, they must go to bed at this time. Don't miss the sleep window and that kind of thing. And look, I totally do respect it with my children. But sometimes it doesn't always work like that. You know, sometimes you just got to be a little bit more flexible and kind of go, oh, okay, well, I did put them to bed maybe 10 minutes later than I should have. And it's like, oh, okay. But, almost don't do it again.
Oh, so you fessed up to it, did you?
Oh, I did a couple of times because that meant that the feeding was pushed back and the next sleep was pushed back. So
Oh,
it's
that's fabulous. Yeah.
it's when they get to 2 or 3 and they start telling mummy and daddy what they did at grandma's that you've got to be really, really careful.
Absolutely. So how are I digress a little bit, but how are the grandparents doing? How are they faring with the pressure that's on them? There's 40, 50%. How are they doing?
I think they're doing pretty good. But they're sort of like the sandwich generation, you know, because some grandparents have got elderly parents that they're looking after, plus they're supporting their grown-up kids and also looking after grandkids. So it can be pretty heavy going for some grandparents. When you should have, you know, you might like to go and have a 6-month overseas holidays, maybe they can't do things like that. But I think overall grandparents are holding up really well. And they do enjoy doing this and they enjoy being part of the grandchildren's lives. And, you know, we didn't necessarily have to go back to work when we had our children because we could live on one wage reasonably okay. And it's all that stuff too that has changed the whole dynamic of parenting and the way that families look these days. You know, the community is not there anymore. There's not the village. It's a different looking village.
It's a different looking village. What the other thing that I was curious about, because I quite like going out, having coffee and watching what's going on out there. What about competition? Got to have, you know, the brands, they've got to look this particular way. Even the push has got to look like this and the pram and the. How rife is that out there?
I think it's very rife. And I think, again, this goes back to that whole peer pressure thing of, you know, all looking the same and not wanting someone to judge you because you don't have as good or as big. And that goes back to all of the marketing as well, because it's big industry. Children and family is big industry. And it's a huge part of the economy now because children drive the spend in families. I don't know whether a lot of people know that, but children drive 90% of the spend in families and, you know, telling mum and dad what they want and what they don't want. And that's pretty daunting when you think about it. I don't know about you, but I would never have told my mum and dad what they needed to buy me or anything.
No, that's right. So is it that we feel like we're giving our children more choice and teaching them, are they thinking for themselves by those kind of decisions?
I think it's the old story of wanting to give your children better than what you had. And I think, you know, like a lot of those sorts of things, the pendulum seems to go a little bit too far, but it's being encouraged by social media and by marketing. And so therefore you find a lot of parents falling into that trap of, I've got to get this when I'm pregnant, I've got to have this kind of clothing, or I've got to go and get these sorts of things for the nursery. But once they've had that first baby, they look at it all and go, gee, I didn't even need half of this. So the second time round, they kind of get rid of it all. But yeah, there is a big push, a big lot of pressure to have so much because you're giving stuff to your child. And that's not necessarily what kids need.
What do they need then?
They just need you to be present, and they need you to love them, and they need you to always show up for them. And if they've got those things, then they've got everything they need.
Is that a big ask? I'm sorry.
What's the big ask?
I said, is that a big ask? And what does that mean?
No, I don't think so. I think that's just fundamental human nurturing and caring and parenting. Our world's changed a lot. The technology's changed a lot, but fundamentally human beings are still the same as they've been for generations and centuries.
So how can I be more present for my child? What the heck does that mean?
Well, it means that when you're with them, that you are giving them your 100% attention. So if they're talking to you in the kitchen and you may be cooking dinner, then maybe put the knife down for 5 minutes and just see what it is that they're really talking to you about, and paying attention and actively listening to what they're saying. Because what you find is a lot of people now are actually on their phones a lot, and people are talking to them, but they're scrolling and they're not really listening. So you can miss a lot with your children by doing things like that. And you're also teaching them that what they're saying isn't that important.
Yes, easily misunderstood in that moment.
Yes, yeah.
Very interesting.
And then, sorry. And then down the track, when they have their technology and they're scrolling and they're constantly in it, you can't then turn around and tell them off for doing it if that's what you've been showing them all along. So I think that being present is not about giving them 120% all the time, because obviously they need to be able to spend time on their own and figure things out. But if you are present when they want to say things to you, then they will do that all through their life and they will trust you. And you need to be that safe space where they can come to.
So that takes us to the second point of always being there for them. Tell me about that. I recently had the privilege to read a book that you wrote, and you have gone above and beyond for your children to be always there for them. And sometimes it hasn't always been easy. So you're saying being present and being there for them. What about if parents just can't? What if they're denied that opportunity? What to do then, Jennifer?
So if you mean by denied that opportunity because the child has taken themselves out of the family, or?
That's what I mean, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's where, and I've had to do a lot of soul searching in that space, because that has occurred in my life, is the nurturing and the loving and the caring of a certain child, or my son, was constantly there. And I was always that safe space and that place to come back to. But as an adult, he has made decisions to not be in my life anymore. And so as a parent, I've sat down and thought, what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong? What made this person do this, my son? And it's taken me a long time to forgive myself and to let myself know that I didn't really do anything wrong. It is just the way that life has come and the messiness of life. It doesn't always go how we plan. And he has grown up and is able to make his own decisions and choices. And as much as that is painful and stabs me to the heart, I can't change that. So it doesn't mean to say it always works out as we'd like, happily ever after. But it doesn't mean to say we shouldn't go there and try that to the best of our ability while we're actually consciously parenting our children.
No, that's right. And you've had personal experience and deep heartache from what I read and what I know of you. But how many parents are in this predicament?
I would suggest quite a lot, actually. If the child hasn't physically taken themselves out of the home, they might have emotionally taken themselves out of the space and not allowed the parents in. That can be just as disappointing. It can be just as heart-aching, because you can't reach your child. You know there's something not right, but you can't get to them, you can't support them, you can't help them. And sometimes you do have to just stop, step back and let go and trust that it will work itself through, because sometimes that's all you need to do. We can't make them do something that they're not going to want to do. I mean, if we could all do that with human beings, we'd be in a good spot, wouldn't we?
Well, it'd be a hell of a lot of control exercised in the world, and we don't want that. We want uniqueness, and we want people to be truly who they are.
Yes.
And, just hearing that about emotionally unavailable, so physically they're there and emotionally they're not. I mean, this to me is heartbreaking.
Mm.
And especially when you talk about being present there for your child, and you can be present there till the cows come home. There's an old phrase.
Yep.
And sometimes it's just not going to cut it.
Yeah. Because you don't know what's created that. And sometimes our children, against everything that they know and what we have brought them up to, can end up in the company of people who are not nourishing for them and who don't, who might carry them off into a different direction, and then they get caught up in that with the excitement and everything. You just got to trust somewhere in there that what you've done at the very beginning because they do know what's right and wrong, and they do know where you are, and they do know what you like. Whether they want to admit it or not, they know all these things from being with you for years. And I've always trusted that they will come back to the space where they know what they should be doing. And it's important that this happens in the very early part of their lives, that they know they've got safe spaces, that they've got people that they can rely on. And the difference between right and wrong comes when they're young. And I believe that that is still in you no matter what age you are. But you can choose to go against it and make other decisions. And you can't stop people doing that. But I've always believed that it's a bit like being a yacht on the ocean. You know, you can go with the winds and you tack in and out of the wind, but you do come back to the journey that you're on and the destination that you're aiming for. And as a parent, that's how I've managed my parenting, because it hasn't gone how I always wanted it to go. And I've had to go off on tact and come back again and reassess. And it's a constant learning thing. Parenting is not. It doesn't stop. And now I'm a grandparent, there's a whole new set of things to learn. So it's right. A journey. It is a big journey.
Well, and that's a bit of a corny phrase these days, nothing about the destination but the journey. But truly, really, it is about the journey and the ever-evolving journey, is it not? So you're someone that believes in personal development. How has that helped you to manage this? And now you're dealing with parents on a daily basis and their challenges that they're faced with. How important is personal development? How do you see it winding into what you do?
Well, I think it's really important. And from my perspective, I've always been someone that likes to know what's going on. Why is it happening? How did it happen? What can I do to change that? And I used to get growled at as a little girl for asking too many questions. I was definitely the why child.
Yeah.
And I was also the inquisitive child that wanted to see how things worked and what that would make it do. So, and coming through my teens when things were very, very challenging, I really realised that I had no real information to fall back on. So I had to learn from scratch how to support myself and make things happen and who I could rely on. And so I did a lot of soul searching and a lot of looking at different ways of understanding the human condition, and particularly my own, so that I could be better at it. And there was a lot of, back then too, I used to put a lot of pressure on myself. I used to feel like it was my fault that things hadn't turned out how I thought they should. And sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes it's just life. And I didn't.
What age are you talking? I just wanted to interrupt there. What age are you talking about?
Well, I was on my own at just on 15. So there were no adults in my life, and I had just started work as a cadet. And so I was surrounded by people I didn't know. So it was very scary. It was a scary space to be in, because I was this little person in a big pond. And I was like the tadpole. I was going, I was really going. And I was trying to find somewhere to put my foot down where I could feel like I was anchored to something. And it took me a lot of years to find that. And personal development came from that, where I just honestly had to every day learn something about myself and, okay, how are you going to use that? What are you going to do with it? Is it going to be worthwhile doing it that way? And a lot of not growling at myself, not putting myself down, but saying, you're doing okay, you're good. I always had a confidence in myself. Inside myself, I was confident, but my brain tried to override it all the time.
So where'd you get the confidence from, do you think?
I've always had that little confidence streak in me. I think just from a very young age, I've always just had this innate confidence in myself, knowing that I could deal with things. I had a granddad that was really supportive, and I know that he and my grandmother were very, very positive people. And I know that perhaps I had a good time with them. That was one of those moments in life where I knew I was safe. And I think that that's where it comes from, that I was given that ability, that I was okay, that what I did or who I was okay. But yeah.
Isn't that fortunate? Because I think we do need those reference points. We do need the guiding lights. We need the modeling. And here are you talking about, grandparents actually being your reference point. And because to talk about confidence is something innate, it's quite unusual. Confidence is usually something we have to keep working on. And I think that's lovely if they were a very strong, what should I say, strong models in your life. How wonderful for you, because 15 out in the world, my goodness, good for you. So how did you survive all those early years?
Actually, I honestly don't know, to be really honest with you. When I look back at that 15-year-old, I really am in awe of her just managing to keep going. I was in survival mode, and I just knew I had to keep going forward because there's no other choice. And I just learned as I went, and I just kept going. And I think that's the thing. When it gets tough, you have a choice. You can stop and fall down in a heap, and you can just give up, or you can say, right, I'm going to keep going until I get to wherever it is that I need to be. I actually really didn't even have an idea where I wanted to be. I just knew I wanted to keep going, and I wanted it to be better. I wanted my life to be better, and I wanted to be happier, because I was not very happy. I wasn't a happy child. I wasn't a happy teenager.
So that makes you a very strong advocate and a wise person to seek out. If there's parents in the audience and listening to this, and there's lots of different ages listen to our podcasts, so you're more than qualified, aren't you, with your wisdom. What do you think's the biggest thing right now that younger people are looking for? What are they looking to us as the adults, us as the, let's say you as the advocate, their parents? What if you could say one thing, what would that be? What do you think they're looking for?
They're looking for wisdom. They want to know, and they want to feel that it's real. It's that authenticity that they're looking for. There's so much that isn't real out there that we're bombarded with every day. And there's also a lot of distress and a lot of heartache on the planet. And they just want to know that they're going to be okay, and that they can do it, and they can survive it, but they can do it well. Because they need to feel grounded. And that's what the human condition needs. It needs to feel grounded and safe. And unfortunately, a lot of people on our planet are not in that space. So having even just talked to my young mums, the one thing I get back as, if you like, as a feedback is that I help them to really understand what's going on. Like, I get it. I understand where they're coming from, and I get it, and I can use the same language that they understand, and therefore they can feel safe in what they're going to do next. You can't give them the answers. You can get them to question what's going on. And I think that's really important now. I don't think a lot of questioning is done. I think it's just, oh, well, that must be okay. That must be right. So I'll go with it.
So is it fair to say then that all of that right now is something that, and I'm going to call them kids, they might shoot me for saying that, but it's not something that's easily articulated. You're saying, that we know right and wrong, and I agree with that from a young age. And what we need is this. We need to be grounded. We need to know all these things. But I don't imagine that many people of the age group that we're talking about and that you work with parents with could articulate that that was actually their needs. Is that true, do you think?
I think it is. They do tend to not really understand what they need. They know they need something, but they can't quite see it. So my way of talking to them is asking them, well, how are you feeling? What is that gut feeling you've got going on right now? And we pull it out from there. And then I say, well, why are you not going with this? And then we talk about that. So then it brings a whole nother layer of stuff for them. And eventually they see that what they have is enough. There's this feeling that you've got to keep giving and giving and taking and adding and adding and adding to make it work. And reading more books and talking to more specialists and going to psychologists. And not that I've got anything against these people, but sometimes you just got to stop and say, well, I'm just going to let all this go. And I did have my daughter, particularly when she was having her child, she kept getting asked at work, are you okay? Or should you be doing this because you're pregnant and everything? And in the end, she had to stop and tell the whole team, I am just having a baby.
Yes.
Okay, I'm good. And she threw the book away after she was pregnant. She said, after she had the baby, she said, I can't do this. I'm just going to do what I reckon's right. And you've got to have the confidence to do that, though.
And you've got to have the support and the mum to help.
Yeah, well, that's probably true.
I don't underestimate that,
Yeah, because I do know that I did some things when my children were little, and I look back now and I think, I wish I had not listened to my mum, and I wish I'd done it the way I wanted to do it.
Yes. Is this what you teach your parents when you're working with them?
Yes, because when I was talking about their parenting style, we bring how we parent from when we were kids, what we grew up with. And if you ever hear yourself talking or saying something that your mum said or your dad said, you go, oh my God, I sound just like my parent.
Yes, I know that one.
That's why we do it. But there's lots of good things we bring through from that. But if there's particular things in there or narratives in there that are not good and they are not functional for the world and your family, then it's learning how to get rid of that and not keep bringing it through into your parenting style, because that will then impact further on the generations. And what we're looking at is building a legacy of children that don't have all those sorts of things, and they can parent that. And every generation can parent a little bit better than the past one.
You think people know the difference?
No, I don't think so. No. And I think also too, it's that saying, well, I mean, a good smack didn't hurt me, so therefore but we wouldn't do that anymore. And we don't shout at our children because it's not good for you. There's a lot, and I love it. There's a lot more concern around the emotional intelligence of young people and bringing them up, that they are a mini human being and that they do take on a lot of hurt and a lot of stress and a lot of pain from parents who haven't found their right space for themselves, who don't know themselves well enough yet, and are therefore reacting to their kids, because kids trigger you.
Oh, absolutely. Especially your own kids, especially, like you see you and then you go, oh, holy heck, I can see it, Yeah. I'd like to digress just for a minute, because you're a volunteer for Violet Guides. Share with us and our audience what that actually means.
So Violet, it provides a service for people who are carers and who are bereaved. So if you're a carer of anyone at home, it could be an aged parent, or it could be a child that's got disabilities or things like that, then it's a service where you can talk to someone like myself. I'm a Violet Guide, and we listen and we hear you, and we also find the right people and the right resources to share with you so that it can lighten your load. And it can also help you find the right support that you need moving forward with the situation that you're in.
How did you get into that? My goodness.
Yeah, interesting. I fell into it by accident. My dad was in aged care and I was really, really struggling. I'd lost I've been lucky to have two sets of parents. I guess I've been lucky. I lost my stepmother, and then my stepdad got very sick and died within 6 months. And then my mum did not recover from that, and she died 3 years later. And then my father came back into my life after many years of being absent, and I was caring for him. So I got to the stage where I really didn't know what to do next, and I didn't know where to go. And I was just doing some work on my computer one day because I was doing training with my students online during COVID. And I popped this little ad for Violet Guide, and I thought, oh, I wonder what that is. And I opened it up and I went, oh, I so would like to do that. I wanted to give back because it's a hard journey. And when you don't know what you don't know, it's even harder. So yeah, right, that's how I've been doing that for 4 or 5 years nearly. And I love it. Absolutely.
And most people wouldn't know that about you, would they?
I guess not. No.
I think it's a lovely thing to have when you're working with parents, because they have a lot of grief, because you're talking about different sorts of grief. Quite often we just relate grief to actual physical loss, but there's so many things that we can be bereaved about. You know, just loss of relationships, loss of emotional connection, and all of those things. How important, as a general thing, do you think engagement is on all levels of when we're talking to each other, and like how vital do you think that is in the big picture here?
I think it's really vital, and I think it's going to become even more vital. A lot of people talk about AI and, you know, you're answering to machines online and all that sort of thing. As I said earlier, I still think people are people, and we still need that contact, and we still need to be engaged with each other, and we need to have our own communities. We need support. That's why there's so many support groups and things around now, because people are recognizing that it's really, really important to be engaged and to know that you can go somewhere and get some sort of support, even if it's just to talk to someone like at Violet Guide. It makes a big difference. You're not so isolated. You are in a situation where you're engaging with someone who's on the same wavelength. Violet Guide people are people who have the same life story or history, and they can empathize and they can guide. And it's the same with parenting. I've learned it the hard way, and I didn't get it right. My goodness, I so didn't get it right on so many levels. But my kids are still here. They are successful children who have now got their own kids. And, you know, it's just sometimes it's nice to just know that you can go to someone and you can sit down and you can say, I am not dealing with this well. And you can't do that with a machine. You've got to be engaged. You've got to make the time to be there physically, and you have to talk to each other. You actually have to make the effort to connect.
That's right. And my experience of you is that you meet a couple of your own criteria where you are there for people and you are present for people, two valuable things. So when parents come to you and they can connect with you on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, to connect with you, to have some guidance and some wisdom brought to the table, that is two things that I know that they're guaranteed of having when they talk to Jennifer Morrison. They will certainly get that, won't they?
Yes, they will. And also, it's really important that you are who you are, that, you know, you don't gild the lily. I am who I am, and I think authenticity is a very underrated thing in this day and age.
That's absolutely true. My goodness, I support that. So, last words of wisdom before we stop this valuable and insightful interview today, Jennifer.
Last words of wisdom. That saying, don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
But I also say that if something's not working, do something about it sooner rather than later. Don't let it escalate. Particularly as a parent, don't think it will get better. If your gut feeling is telling you that it's not, listen to it. Search out some way of getting some support and some help. You'd do it for anything else. You'd do it if your kids weren't doing well at sport, or if they weren't doing well at math, you'd get a tutor. It's no different for yourself. Make yourself the parent that you want to be for your kids. And I think that has to start very beginning. If you're not sure, get out and do something about it. Look at yourself and say, how can I do this better?
That's fabulous. That's great. And I love the analogy, you know, if your child's not doing good at maths, we better get a tutor, and sport and all of those sort of things. So why not, as a parent, get a parental guide such as yourself? You know, Jennifer, I know a lot about you, but I know a lot more about you from today, and I thank you for your willingness and your openness and your authenticity in sharing with us today. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful, and I look forward to speaking with you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary. It's been lovely, and I've really enjoyed sharing with you today, and thank you for asking me.
You are so welcome.
This week's episode has come to an end, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like, share, and get involved. Join us next time.